Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer. Danny Katz is with me. This is, in one sense, words number 39. And in two senses, it is not words number 39. And after you say hello and whatnot, I will explain to you why that is.
Hi, Emily. I love your hat.
Thank you. So first of all, obviously, we have multiple show number 36s because of our good friend Robert Forte. But that's not the main reason. The main thing that I figured out when I was trying to back everything up to BitChute, which as soon as I backed everything up, now it doesn't seem to want to process and publish anything anymore. And so, yeah, I'm in the process right now of deciding whether I want to do this somewhere else on Odyssey Library or something else, or just say forget it. And if people want to be guaranteed of getting shit, they have to become patrons, because it's not that I feel like, oh, people have to pay for everything all the time, but I literally wasted weeks that I'm not going to get back trying to upload things to BitChute, and so many of them are stuck in process and publish, and nothing that I've tried to upload in the last week is uploaded.
Yeah, I've had the same problem with BitChute, and it's a freaking nightmare. I still haven't even started loading our words onto my library BitChute. Like, it's a nightmare. And I've talked to Miriam Hanine and Zach Voorhees about this, all these people who've been censored, and every option just sucks right now. But I also wouldn't put all your eggs in the Patreon basket, because at any moment they could decide that you're a domestic terrorist and take all your shit down. It does seem like what I like about Odyssey is that it's on the blockchain, so it feels safe from censorship, even though the buffering, they load faster than BitChute, but the buffering for people to watch is kind of a nightmare too.
So yeah, no, I don't have all my eggs in the Patreon basket. I also now am on Locals, which I completely disagree with him about tons of things and have problems with Dave Rubin, but I do think he believes in free speech. So I'm over there. And so this will be a test of whether or not he believes in free speech. So the one that people have been recommending to me is the most user-friendly and easy to deal with is Rumble. But of course, that brings up more. Everyone's going to say you're a Nazi if you post there than was the issue with BitChute. So I don't even care at this point if people think I'm a Nazi, but you know, whatever it is. So
I will say the customer service on Odyssey, the guy who started it, he responds to me generally within minutes. Like, the support has been fantastic. Yeah. So on a human level, I really want to support what he's doing, because he's been fantastic. Yeah. And I also feel, and he's constantly upgrading. So I feel like it's going to get better as far as me investing my time and effort. Yeah. I believe in what he's creating. And it doesn't have that same sort of like marginalization propaganda that BitChute and Rumble have.
Right. Yeah, I got you. So anyway, the point of my saying all of this was when I was backing everything up, I realized that at some point in our archive, or at some point in our history, I got confused on the numbers of shows between Matrix Mash and Words, and we skipped a whole series of numbers and went from like 19 to like 27 or something like that, because I accidentally looked at a Matrix Mash episode, right, or something. When I was going back to see, okay, what number is this? I accidentally looked at a Matrix Mash instead of a Words, and so we skipped. But I'm just going to say we took a quantum leap forward, right? Like, we just skipped a bunch of grades or something like that helped us to get to our like 33rd degree of chatter earlier, and now we're here at 39, so we're really about to go into our 40s, significant, middle age, whatever. I don't know. We skipped grades. We're very smart. But yes, so it is 39, okay. But it's also not 39.
Okay, so I'm gonna take partial responsibility for this, because my other podcast that I do with Justin, Conscious Awesome, is completely non-linear and out of order. I think we have 2 episode 4s. So maybe there's something in my energetic blueprint that just fucks with all of the chronology.
Whatever it is, I think that I'm probably responsible for this one, but we just do better in life when we accept responsibility for what's happening. So I will, you will, we're very responsible, and there we go. We own our own future. There we go. Okay, so now that we've done all of the numerical housekeeping, what's going on, dude? You and I have hardly talked the last couple of weeks. I think we've both been super duper busy. I know you've been doing your salon series and whatnot, and I've been just really busy with shows and all kinds of stuff. So I don't even have any idea what you're tracking, what you're paying attention to, what's going on.
I don't either. This is honestly the most accelerated year I've experienced just this past month. I'm amazed at how quickly time is moving and how much quantum leaping is happening. So it's hard for, I mean, you can tell I'm in a new place. That happened in a 4-day span. So what's on my radar? I mean, there's the shit show that is going on in our world, and my, you know, my present, just my doubt on everything. Like, I kind of believe nothing anymore. I'm tracking, of course, the game, what is it, Gamestop, that whole thing, and then the push towards crypto, which our audience well knows I do not trust. I do not fucking trust AI as our saving grace. I've been tracking the Greater Reset. I don't know. I'm mostly really focused right now on just decentralizing my whole life and getting completely self-sufficient and completely sovereign, so that as it continues to collapse, I can still be fine and show up for my community.
Cool. All right. I want to address all those things. So this interesting you said about time moving so quickly, because I've remarked in a number of shows that I think time is moving incredibly slowly. I feel like the month of January lasted forever and every day felt like a week. And for me, that wasn't actually a bad thing. I quite enjoyed that, because for all of 2020, I felt short on time. But for the first time over the last few weeks, I've had time to get done all the things that I had planned to do during a day, and usually with extra time. I've even found myself a few times going, shit, it's only noon. What am I going to do now? Right. And, you know, and also, like, it was particularly long days when we were visiting Austin, but we were having a good time. So it's not like, oh my God, these days are fucking lasting forever, let them end. It was just like, we could not believe how much shit we got done and how much we just still had time to kind of lay around and relax and shoot the shit and do whatever. So my experience of time has been different than that. You're the first, and I've been talking about this with a lot of people who seem to be on the other side of the continental, of like the Mississippi River, seem to not, they thought time was going fast or the same as 2020. You're the first person that I've spoken to in the Western United States who doesn't feel like time has slowed down. So very interesting.
That's so interesting. I mean, of course we know that time is relative, and I have a theory with your particular attunement to geometry and structure. Like, I consider you a time wizard, so I'm not surprised to know that you're stretching time and you're maneuvering time, but I'm surprised to hear that I'm the only one who feels this. I mean, since January 1st, which was when I had the decision, I'm going to manifest land with a river on a hot springs, manifested it, gone back and forth, made an offer, found out I'm moving, my quantum languaging app is in motion. Like, all my things are just moving at not even an accelerated pace, a hyper accelerated pace. And I'm literally running to get everything done and go days without checking email. And yeah, I'm having a really different experience.
That's how last year was for me. So that's interesting, right? Like that, I was having a lot of that last year. So it is interesting. I also think that, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I think that we are experiencing some sort of temporal pincer movement, temporal energy kind of events where, like,
what is a pincer movement? What does that mean?
Pincer movement is, if you watch the movie Tenet, that's the move that they're basically doing there, where you have two different timelines that may be running in opposite directions, and then you have this area or the space where they sort of cross over, and you can kind of go in there, and for like a 10-minute span, things can sort of be rearranged, right? And it doesn't always have to be 10 minutes, but we're dealing with these blocks of time, right? Like, I think we had some of them around the time of the 6th of January, and then again during the time of the inauguration, where it almost feels like there's space, there's like events happening in physical space that are being created by the fact that time is malleable in locations for that time, right? And it's a lot of chaos. When you're in this space where time is sort of fluid in both directions for this temporal pincer movement, you can go into that and sort of perform a heist, right? Where you can shift something for your own sort of timeline or whatnot. So I think we're experiencing an array of different temporal realities, kind of thing, like, right? Space and time is sort of a funny thing right now. And then the way that we attune to it, definitely also, right? Now, you said something else when when I asked you what you've been tracking, you said something else about
I mentioned GameStop.
You mentioned GameStop, you mentioned cryptos, you mentioned the greater reset. Was there anything else you mentioned?
I mentioned my focus right now is on decentralization and sovereignty.
Okay, so we, Michael and I just recorded an episode of our new series, Playing the Glass Bead Game, and we were talking about other perceptions of what's been going on with games, the stock market stuff and the crypto space stuff. And
good, I want to talk about this because I do not think it's what they're telling us it is.
Right. So first of all, like when the thing happened on January 6th, and then this other period of time that happened right around the inauguration, through like we were in a palindromic date situation from 1/20/21 to 1/29/21, and that we kind of identified that as a temporal like pincer movement, that there was these financial things associated with it, right? So I'm curious as to the energy that is created through these surges in stocks and Bitcoin. Remember we had that big surge of Doge and a surge of Bitcoin back in like the surge of Bitcoin in the beginning of January went right along with the capital movement thing and stuff like that. So I'm curious about the relationship between those surges and the surges of energy of people on the ground, right? So I've talked about that, but also like these 3-letter acronyms that we use for everything, including stocks, cryptocurrencies, politicians like AOC, movements like Black Lives Matter. What else do these letters code for? And yesterday we started to look into like what BTC stood for, what Doge stood for, if you reinterpreted what those letters meant to chemical symbols, right? And we came up with some interesting things. And so I think we have to, just because we think somebody means something when they put an acronym, we don't know that for sure. What are the other possible perceptions? What other things can be given energy through a surge in what we know as the stock market or the crypto market? If there's something else riding on that same frequency, what else is getting juice? And so we looked into it and we found that like there seems to be a lot of things known as smart chemicals that are associated with these combinations of letters, right? Smart cleaning agents, smart chemicals. And we got into a conversation about that. And obviously we've talked in the past about like how BLM used to be Bureau of Land Management and then it became Black Lives Matter and, you know, whatever. So there
well, it is still Bureau of Land Management.
Right, but that's when you say BLM, nobody thinks that. They think Black Lives Matter. What, like there's a restaurant here in Los Angeles that's fabulous called AOC, but nobody thinks of that when you say AOC. They think of Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, right?
Well, I remember AOC.
Right. So, okay. So like there's this whole, because you used to work at Luke and it's owned by the same person, right? So
your memory is so spot on. I almost forgot that.
Anyway, so like, so we kind of have been, you know, taking a look at that, like what other things are being coded for with this stuff, right? And so we kind of dug into that. And then you were saying that you were tracking the greater reset, right? So there's obviously, we've been informed about the Great Reset, and then there's the greater reset, right? Which I'm familiar with as well. But there's apparently something also called the going direct reset, which maybe the Great Reset is the distraction from, right? I listened to a really good conversation with James Corbett and Catherine Austin Fitz talking about this going direct kind of thing. So
when did this happen? Last week. Powerhouse.
Last week. Go to James Corbett's Corbett Report Extras because he was banned. He was suspended for a week or two off of YouTube or whatever. So you can find him there chatting with her and this going.
Infantilizing. Suspended for a week. What are we in 7th grade? And he was caught like chewing gum. So
it was a retroactive strike on some of his videos.
Okay.
Right, because like once they change their policies, they can then go back and strike videos put up before they change their policies, and of course you won't know what that will be until it happens. And so he got sent to the corner for a minute.
Of course. Well, I just want to pause because I want to dive into this, but before we get too far away from the GameStop thing, mm-hmm. I'm noticing that after GameStop, my sovereign friends are even more excited than ever about crypto and about all the money they're going to make on Dogecoin and all of that. And so I see this, like, again, looking from all angles. Of course, I'm thrilled to fuck over Wall Street, who have been playing fair forever. That's wonderful. But the fact that it's moving everyone with even more momentum into this sort of AI digital currency realm feels like a trap to me. In the same way that it felt like a trap to get all the truth tellers off of Instagram with their user terms that went out on December 20th, this feels like a trap to herd everyone back into crypto.
Right. So I think that like there's a couple of things going on. So I think they are interested in normalizing crypto because they want to roll that out as like the US dollar digital coin kind of stuff, right? So there is that. But they also they want to put other things on the blockchain besides just money, like health records and digital passports and vaccine records and things like that, possibly. But I think the other thing is they're interested in creating, so like through this GameStop thing, which is what people were investing in it through apps, right? Through apps on the phone. And that's largely how cryptos work, is people engage, you know, they don't go to a broker or the same, I mean, you can, but a lot of people just do it privately, right? I think they want to create blockages or hurdles you have to get over in order to be able to do that. Things requiring identity, so you can't be making exchanges outside of the awareness of governmental agencies. I think they're also interested in creating a scenario where people have to identify themselves before onboarding onto the internet, where maybe even to experience certain levels of the internet, you have to pay for it, or you have, or whatnot. I think there's an internet 2.0 coming. And so I think these things right now, they want to be able to create new legislation because of the instability the instability being created by the GameStop scenario and by the people trying to take, you know, the economy into their own hands and whatnot. Like you see, you know, there's a story about one of the guys who was one of the Wall Street Bets guys who, you know, made $19 million and lost it, right? Because he held on to his games. They're highlighting that story, right? It's like, see, you guys are really too stupid to know how to do this for yourself. So they're looking for more reasons to create an internet and financial nanny state, right? Wherever you have to have permission and, you know, pay $200 to pass go and all of that kind of shit, right? So that's definitely a part of it. And, you know, there's also this push, and you can see this, and Robert and I talked about this last night, of like, there's going to be a digital Occupy Wall Street 2.0 that will allow them to create these new rules. And also there probably will be some real life protests that pop up in relation to that. And then that'll be more reasons to crack down, just like, you know, and everything is going to be to make more rules and more nanny state, and more police state and whatnot. And so I think we're going to see this for a bit, where there's going to be a lot of these things that look like people are getting back at the man, but they're actually events that were probably promoted by the man in order to create this chaos that will then allow them to, everything is that fucking problem reaction solution, right? But I do think, and Robert and I talked about this last night, is they're letting some genies out of the bottle that they're not going to be able to get back into the bottle, right? It's going to become harder and harder to control all of these things that they're letting loose. So I think there's going to be a lot of chaos, and they're going to try and snap down and crack down on it. But I ultimately don't think it's going to work, right? Like it's too naked at this point. Like they're not even trying to hide hide what they're doing, right? Like you literally, I mean, they're not even like being clever in the way that they're trying to disguise stuff, right? Like Joe Biden has done nothing but sign executive orders for the last, 10 or 12 or 13 days, right? The Anthony Fauci he literally said in the same interview, it's common sense to wear 2 masks, and there's no data that shows wearing masks does anything. He used to at least separate the contradictory statements into separate interviews. Now he's just putting them in the same interview, right? So the emperor is not only wearing no clothes, the emperor has never even heard of clothes at this point, right? And so it's just too stupid. And reality itself,
too stupid. It's so over the top at this point. It's very hard to take it seriously, or to take anyone seriously who's taking it seriously. And at the same time, because it's so volatile, and there's also this energy moving through where people are batter shitter than normal. It's like placating toddlers every second so that they don't lose it. Yeah. It's crazy. It's just crazy right now.
Yeah. So, I think like it's reality itself is crumbling, right? Like there's just everything. So like I started, and this is kind of what we had originally said we were going to talk about today, is like how surreal and Truman Show everything is right now. And like we have reached, in my opinion, like the final scene of Dark City or the 13th Floor, where you just kind of like rip the paper that seems like it's a wall, or go off where the simulation ends and there's just nothing there but computer code kind of thing. We're at that scene, and you know, like everyone's been looking at those videos of like, okay, the White House looks like it's a stage set. There's like no activity going on in there. It looks like a movie set, right? Say, you know, the thing that's popped to my mind is, what if it's always been this way, but it's us that's changed? We have finally gotten to the point where we realize, like a certain stage of waking up was realizing all the politics were fake, and that like our votes don't actually count. It's a handful of people controlling policy, controlling money, da 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 da, right? But what if it literally has always been a cast of characters on a movie set, but we were still emotionally involved with it? And when you see a really good actor, like, forget that you're watching a movie, right? And it's just, we have advanced to the point now where we can see the grip moving, the light, the crew moving the things around, where we can see like, okay, the stage is dark kind of thing. And we're starting to recognize that, oh, like the characters, some of the times they're wearing masks. Like I was watching this video of like Robert, you know, Robert he loves this shit, right? He loves to try and show it's a clone, or there's wires under Joe Biden's skin or whatever, right? So he has this one where there's like this wad of skin right here that looks like one of those like rubber masks. Like remember in Scooby-Doo, right? We've talked about this. So we're just getting to the point now where we're like, oh, fuck, like that's a mask, right? Like maybe the reason that we are, like maybe reality was coded for masks during this period of time. And the first perception of it was that we're supposed to wear them for some silly nonsense, you know what, right? But really it's also that there's a recognition that like, everybody who we think of as real ultimately might be wearing a mask. And so like, maybe you should check and see if there's a bunched up piece of skin over there.
I think you're spot on. And the only thing is I don't think it's an either or. I think it's both. Yeah. I think we are starting to realize that it's been this fake and this much bullshit the whole time. Mm-hmm. Nothing has been what it seems. And the fakery is revving up, getting sloppier. It's like they're working. I do feel like the larger entity that is, you know, all that is love, intelligence, which is, you know, rooting for life, right? It has orchestrated it so that they're both, we're waking up to the sham as the sham is getting so fucking insane and insulting and sloppy, and it's all happening at the same time to reach some grand crescendo. Like the status quo is done. And you and I have talked about for a couple of years when I was like, well, they're not doing all of this for nothing. Like there will come a time where it's gonna be for the big grand finale. And I feel like that's what we're in. So I feel like you're totally right. It's been super fake. I don't think I've yet to really grok, or really anyone, how fake it is. Like I look at the moon and I just wait for it to like flop over or fall out of the sky, you know?
Yeah. So that
it does feel like this, it's going towards some great big giant collapse, explosion, something.
Okay, so this is, I think, I'm gonna help you out with this a little bit, right? So Jeff and I did a special sort of deep dive live research show last week about the actor Rufus Sewell. Okay, do you know who Rufus Sewell is?
I know the name.
So he was in Dark City, but he's also like the reason I ended up watching Dark City and Man in the High Castle about the same time, even though they were more than 20 years apart and totally different kinds of characters and movies and whatnot. Rufus Sewell, both of them, right? And so I, for some reason, like, okay, interesting. And then, you know, this character he's playing in the Man in the High Castle was interesting. And the Man in the High Castle has bled over into a lot of my work. And then when Michael and I were talking about the Man in the High Castle, it started to become entangled. This guy, John Smith, or Rufus Sewell, John Smith is his name in the Man in the High Castle, and the person is Rufus Sewell, started to become entangled with the way Michael and I have been unraveling things in Project Kids, right? And so I became even more interested in him. And then I went and decided to look him up online, like look up his filmography, right? And recognize, okay, now I'm personally entangled with him because he was in a movie about Judy Garland as well, right? So he was in a movie called The End of the Rainbow about Judy Garland, and I was in a movie called Rainbow about Judy Garland. So now we have a personal level of entanglement. So then Jeff and I did a deep dive into his filmography. And if you look at the shit, we only got halfway through it, went for like 3 hours. We have to do a part 2, right? The shit that he has been, we're like, what the fuck is this? This is an encoded career. This is an encoded person. Who is this person? Are actors, are they choosing, maybe not all of them, but certainly some of them, or maybe all of them, are they choosing their roles in films based on other lives they're concurrently living, or that they have lived past, present, or future, right? Like they go look at his fucking filmography and click on the movies he's been in and just start pulling at the threads, right? So one of the movies that he has been in, and this was like the aha moment of how fucking crazy everything has been. He was in a movie called like, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer, or Abraham Lincoln Vampire or something or whatnot, right? And we we looked at what it was, and of course there's been all of this attention paid to like Lincoln Monument last week and what was going on over there, right? And like, what if quite literally like Abraham Lincoln didn't come into this reality to free the slaves or do the whatever the fuck he was doing with the Civil War? Like, what if he like literally chased a vampire into this reality and was here on some mission from another, right? Like, it sounds stupid, right? But we are so confused about where we are, who we are, what we are, and what the fuck is going on, that that's as reasonable of an explanation as to why so much attention is paid to Abraham Lincoln as any other.
I totally buy it. And as long as we're talking about Abraham Lincoln, you had asked me what I've been geeking out on. It's mostly metaphysical, occult fucking weirdness.
Mhm.
And I saw this interview with this woman. She goes by Oracle Girl, but she's like a Tibetan nun alien. And she was talking about Christ consciousness and all the different incarnations of Christ conscious. And she says that Abraham Lincoln is Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, a vampire, who the fuck knows, right? Maybe they're the same.
Right. I'm at the point where I'm like, sure to all of it, because it's also fucking fake. Who knows what is really happening? Sure, Abraham Lincoln's a vampire chaser and Christ and the person who works at Tasty Freeze. Sure.
I can't remember if it was he's a vampire slayer. Hold on a second. Let me look it up so I'm not doing it wrong here.
I mean, that would kind of make sense that Jesus himself would be a vampire slayer. You've got the cross thing and the wood. I mean, who knows? It's all
vampire hunter. Abraham Lincoln, vampire hunter. No, okay, yeah. So, like, literally, like, what if that is what not really like we think he was hunting slave owners? Maybe he was hunting vampires, right? Like, we just have we don't know. We just don't know. And so
maybe slave owners were vampires, and that's why they needed slaves so that they could have their food. So, like, yes to all of it at this point,
right? So, yes, okay. So Rufus Sewell is a kind of an interesting character. Like, literally, go look at his filmography, read the descriptions of the films, look at some of the people associated with it, and the names of like the production companies and shit. You're like, dude, this is hilarious. Like, this is some sort of like, way that they embed truth in all of this kind of stuff. So we're gonna probably finish it next week, because we got halfway through and we're like, we're tired. We need to take a break, dude. More juicy than I thought it would be. Like, I knew it would be juicy, but it was like, this is ridiculous, right? And so okay, so I was that's where we're at with reality being completely surreal, right? I'm at the point where like I'm willing to consider that Abraham Lincoln was a vampire hunter.
No, this is the point I'm at. Like, I have to go like a few layers out to absurd to try to grok what's really happening. Because all these layers, disinformation, alt news, like, it's not it. It's still within the confines of the lie. It's got to be way more out there. So yes, we're on the same track.
Yeah. So anyway, so for me, all of this stuff that's been going on regarding, loss of freedoms or political tyranny, I'm just not that bothered by it, because it's part of this whole surreal thing, right?
theater. It's all theater. Like, it's just theater. It's just writing out the theater in the play and lying low and Aikidoing to stay out of it.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to me to watch the way the different players are playing the game. Like, there's some fools out there exercising in the park with 2 masks on, right? And then there's other entire families of people with no masks who look like they don't even know what a mask is, right? Kind of thing. So like, this is a wide open game board where everyone's sort of playing it their own fucking way. And I'm less annoyed by seeing, you know, people doing things that we think of as not sane anymore, as I'm just amused by it. I'm like, this is a wonderful reality, right? Like, this is just like, I mean, it's hilarious to watch the things that people are doing, right? It's just, it's funny. It's funny. It doesn't feel like, you know, like, and I don't mean this in like a Q5D chess kind of way, but it doesn't feel like Joe Biden or anyone else for that matter is actually president. Like, I don't know if we're in a reality anymore that requires presidents. I don't know if we ever were. We just thought we were, right?
I definitely feel like we're done with presidency, but Sally and I were talking about this morning where I'm like, I can't believe the Biden sham has gone on this long. Like, it's so interesting that everyone's playing along and he's doing these things. And I'm like, we're really buying this? It's so bizarre to me. And another piece, which I forgot to mention, was I have an ex-boyfriend of mine is a big time Axios reporter. And back when we were doing whatever we were doing, he was a lawyer. He's never been to journalism school. And he would brag about how unscrupulous he was. And he would brag about how much he would lie and connive and manipulate to get ahead in his law firm, and called himself a sociopath and had no morals whatsoever. And then I watch, because I see him on Twitter.
Did you used to date Glenn Greenwald? I thought he was gay. Now, I'll say this. Glenn Greenwald is very principled on one level. I hat tip to him. On one level, but on the other level, he's all those things you just said.
That's so crazy. Is like, you have these people, it's like anyone who's on Joe Rogan is going to have their one level of truth and then all the other bullshit around it. This guy, like, no, he doesn't have that one level that Glenn Greenwald has. But when I was watching his coverage of the Biden sham and the election, I finally reached out. So this is what's happened since you and I talked. I reached out and I'm like, dude, you have children. Like, why are you trying to bring in slave world? They're not going to spare you. Like, just because you're doing their bidding for the globalists now, you're still like ringing in slave world for your children. Are you aware of what you're doing? So there is that part of me that, even though I'm like, it's ridiculous, it's not what it seems, there's still that little piece that's like trying to show up for justice, which is just spinning my wheels.
Yeah. I'm to the point, I don't try and change anyone's minds anymore. I've stopped sending articles to my family ever, right? I just don't do it anymore. Like, I just clap for whatever reality they think that they're, you know, and it seems like we're in mutual agreement that they're clapping for me and they think was my made up ridiculous reality. So it's just like, it's all okay, right? Like, it's highly amusing. You know, I forgot to talk about this in anywhere else. So I saw the weirdest UFO. I don't know. I'm not a big UFO seer unless I'm on mushrooms, and then I'm not sure those are really UFOs, but I just don't know what else to call them. Like, Laura and I were watching TV, and all of a sudden I see this red, like, pink glow in the sky, and I look outside, and there's this glowing red pink ball that is kind of going like this, and it sort of disappears. But I run outside real quick, and and there's this thing that doesn't look like, we live near the airport, right? So I'm used to seeing helicopters, planes. There was something else that I've never sort of seen before that looked like it was kind of trying to follow and catch and whatnot, right? But I was like, okay, so that, like, this, I've never seen, you know, whenever people talk about anomalies in the sky, I've never seen anything look like this either. It was this huge red, like, looked like an enormous, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer's nose, a ball that was red, giving off all this pink light and then just falling. Right? Like, it was so interesting. But that's like, we're at this place now where I'm like, okay, like, this is what's going on. Like, the things from the other realities are all coming in. We have this pretend reality that we were all a part of for all this time, and we're starting to recognize that it's a play, and we also are to a certain extent fake, because we've been acting in this play all along. And just like the whole, you've been to a rave, right? Like have you ever been to a rave? Like, I don't know if you ever stayed to the end, but like when they turn the lights on, right? And you see the way all the things were set up behind the stage, and you see all the like, you know, like club kids or trannies, like their makeup, they look kind of terrifying, and there's trash and drugs all over the floor. And it's like, oh, this is how the sausage is made, fuck, right? Like that's where we're at, right?
That's totally, but it's like, while that is happening simultaneously, I also feel like the new is emerging at the same time. And the key is like, just don't look, just don't, you know, like just keep going forward. That's where I'm at, is like, I can't even pay attention to the wreckage that is gonna continue to get bigger and louder. And I'm seeing UFOs literally every day. I sent you the picture yesterday of like, those aren't clouds.
Yeah, no, we've had some of those same ones around here the last couple of weeks and stuff. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm starting to recognize that maybe on every level, all the chemtrails of all the variety of different kinds ever were things trying to hide what was going on in the sky, as opposed to the purpose being to poison us. That they also poisoned us was a benefit for the you know, whoever the fucking people who think they're the managers of reality are, right?
Oh, wait, while you mentioned chemtrails, this is actually really important. Someone did send me this. There's this big question here in New Mexico of why are there so many high numbers of the Wuhan virus among like the Navajo Nation and the indigenous tribes? Like you know, Gallup actually got shut down because there was such a big thing. There were, you know, high numbers with the indigenous. And I saw this video of this woman who's a member of the Navajo Nation who lives on the reservation. And she said that there were all these low flying planes spraying shit over their reservation that they'd never seen before. And after a few days of this spraying, they had people coming in saying, you guys really need to get tested. You guys really need to get tested. And as soon as they got tested, they all had it. And it was like, we're under quarantine. We haven't even gone anywhere. So and it also reminded me of Robert Forte talking about the fires came after the chemtrails. Like how much of a big part of this sham the chemtrails are playing.
Right. Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff going on, right? Like, I mean, there's just all we have to like go back to the drawing board, because even all of I'm not saying that we haven't figured anything out and that we don't know anything at all, right? But I do think the thing that's becoming more, when you have this experience of like, the more things you start to know, the more you realize you don't actually know anything. At a certain point, you have to go back to the base level and go, okay, am I even like, is my perception of what reality is even anywhere close to true? Because like otherwise, you know, like I think one of the things, and I've talked about this quite a bit and I'll continue to, think we have been mistaken for our entire lives, certainly, that there was a barrier between what we thought of as fiction and what we thought of as reality, right? There is no barrier. Right? If it exists here, it's part of the story, whether you think it's your biography or whether you have written a fantasy or a fairy tale about something or whatever, right? So like back to that level, it equalizes a lot of information and starts to offer us more possible answers for things, because it ends the wall of like, you can't consider that as a solution or possibility because that's a fairy tale. That's over, right? So, you know, and then, you know, we think of outside as nature or organic life, and this thing that's trying to be imposed over it as technology or synthetic or digital or AI or whatever. Well, wait a second, like what, you know, the thing we think of as nature, maybe it's a previous form of technology, or a technology that comes from a different kind of creator than what's creating this fucking garbage thing that we don't like now, right? And so we're not really understanding how that works and how to tune ourselves to that. And what are we sure that we're real and we're not technology of some sort? Like, I think all of these things are at play, and it makes it like chaotic, but also kind of cool and fun, because it lessens the like the sort of I don't know, like I've been losing my words a lot lately. Like when something seems so dire or immediate or crucial that it gets handled, right? That's
how I've been feeling the last couple weeks, of like that anxiety I had and the pressure around like the survival plan and the this and the that. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's all fucking fake. And I feel like I don't have as much fear. I have more detachment around it. And I'm just kind of watching and observing and like, whatever happens is going to happen, but it's certainly not anything that I thought it was. And I've also called into question my more conspiratorial leanings, as you know, as I moved and I have all these supplies and all this food and my friends are making fun of me, and Ross is like, well, the internet still hasn't gone down. And I'm like, maybe I've been wrong about the whole thing. You're right. That's fine. I'm willing to own that, because I'm clearly wrong about what reality is and what a person is and what government is. So right. Yeah, maybe I've been full of shit this whole time. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, it's never a bad thing to have a little extra food or whatever, right? But I mean, I think like what you were just saying right then, like that, well, the internet still hasn't gone down, which makes me go, do we even understand what the internet is? Could the internet even possibly go down? Or if something happened that shut down one, would another one immediately, we would just go to the next. It wouldn't even be a breakage in service, right? Like, it's just kind of like, when you're in a house, and I don't mean this like, oh, they put something in place to help us, right? But like, when you're in a place where the power goes out and the backup generator goes right on, and often you don't even have to go do anything to make that happen. It just goes right away, right? Do we live in this this space that supports a variety of different realities, and when one comes to an end, the next one just begins right there, kind of thing, right? And so,
I also think there's something to speaking to things, and then that the plans are in place, and once we name them and enough people sign on, then they're like, okay, that won't work, and we go on to the next. Because I look at the astrology, and this is not going to be a smooth sailing year. Like, there's no, like this, like the system is crumbling, regardless of this little moment of shamness and pretending like, the China op is our president and all of that. This is a moment. This is a blip.
This morning, Robert called the president Xi Biden.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, what do we call him? G Biden, like J-I?
G, like Xi Jinping, X-I, Xi Biden.
It's so crazy to me that people buy this shit. But it has gone to the place like you were talking about with your family. Like, if you're happy, I respect your happiness. If you like this fiction, that's great. Yeah. Roll with your fiction.
Yeah, roll with it, dude. Make it grand, make it exciting, make it wonderful, make shit up, see if it comes true. That's what I do. So, hey. Totally. All right. So, and I was starting to wonder, I was like, what happened to Sally? I haven't talked to Sally in a while. So I'm glad to know that Sally gets more mentions on this show than anybody who's not a public figure. So Sally's almost a public figure from all of the mentions on this show. I'm not talking to Sally. Sally's all right?
Yeah, Sally's great.
Awesome. Now that everybody knows Sally's good, the world can continue. All right.
So just one piece that I wanted to give our audience that was, the whole Greater Reset had so many great things. I love Charles Eisenstein talking about capitalism is not the problem, which it isn't. Debt economy is the problem. The fact that no one can afford shit is the problem. But the big takeaway that I got was like, of course, food sovereignty, of course, financial sovereignty, but that every community needs a 3D printer. And any shit that they try to take away or create a shortage when the community has a 3D printer, you're sovereign. And I thought that was brilliant.
I mean, which goes to what I was saying about, is that, are we sure we're not sitting in somebody's off-grid farm that they were shut off from supplies, and this person 3D printed an entire reality into existence for shits and giggles?
I think they absolutely printed. I mean, that's my sense of it. And when they talk about the archons are the ones who are driving this whole thing, I'm like, who's driving the archons? Right. Like, who's behind that simulation?
Right. It's all layers upon layers. It's a very well fleshed out game of The Sims or whatever the fuck it is that people do. Yeah. I like Charles Eisenstein. He has a nice smile. I see him smile.
Huh? He does. And he has such sane ideas, and he's just such an equanimous speaker. Like, he takes the middle ground, but from from like a sane, in like higher intellectual place.
Yeah.
His Greater Reset talk was awesome. I highly recommend it.
I haven't looked at the Greater Reset stuff. I just have too much stuff on my go right now. But
one issue with it was all the tech stuff and how many people, and I get that we're in this crossroads, right? Are we going to full-fledged AI, like technocratic transhumanism state? So you have like the tech nerds who are saying that AI and crypto is our saving grace, and that's where I'm like, and then maybe it's just my like old school Luddite dinosaur tendencies, but that was the one piece where I'm like, it's kind of shaky there.
So I think that like, and this goes, you know, I know a lot of people in this alternative media space, and there's a lot of people that are super pro crypto and super pro technology, and a lot who are absolutely anti it and think it's just like demonic, you know, machinations from hell. And I think that you know, it's not that simple, right? That's like, it's not that simple. I think that like my computer is not evil. It's the bullshit that's been loaded on it by some of the companies, right? That's evil, right? Like, I don't think that cryptocurrency in and of itself, like the basic stripped down idea or technology of it is by itself evil. It's when people don't understand who's behind something, what it's going to be used for, what the end-to-end kind of like there's every possibility exists within this kind of stuff. And there's no, like when people are like crypto is evil and it's not really money, and if you knew the people who are behind it and what they're using it for, blah blah blah, you're going to be sucked into the AI, hive mind, transhumanism, da da da. Well, the same thing could be said about the US dollar, right? So to say that like one is more evil than the other or whatnot, I think.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I think we don't know. I think technology like is a fact of life. Right, technology, and at this point, you know, money or some kind of currency is a fact of life, and there's all kinds of iterations of that can happen, and we, you know, like we can't make a blanket statement that all of something is good or all of it is bad, and the only way we can actually know for sure is to research it a bit, understand it, and experiment with it. And when something's not for you, regardless of what somebody else is saying is amazing or whatever, you make that decision for yourself. It's not for me, maybe it's for someone else, and move on.
I see the potential in crypto, and I hear what you're saying. It's totally not black and white, but right now we really are in a war for our sovereignty, right? Like we have been slaves. We've all been born into a slave system, and there are these pieces that are putting in to sustain humanity's enslavement. And right now we're in this like big, giant, mythic, epic battle of vanquishing evil and claiming our sovereignty. And I feel like until we're sovereign and we've rooted out those elements, I feel like once we're sovereign and that shit is rooted out and we have clear distinctions, then maybe we could go to crypto. But again, assuming that everyone can afford to have a computer and a phone and everyone has access. But right now it's too messy and muddled with the surveillance state and the CCP and all these other pieces. So I feel like it's not the right time for us to make that jump, because there are too many possibilities for those evil enslavement mechanisms to get in and perv it.
All right, I'm gonna go for like a grand explanation, analogy, like kind of thing here, and it might flop on its ass because I'm gonna see if I can. I'm rooting
for you. I'm rooting for you.
So, and I'm also gonna give you some language correction. The main way in which I disagree with you is that I don't think we're in a giant, epic, mythic war battle for our sovereignty. I think we're in an epic game being played for our sovereignty, right? The prize, right? And so just when you switch that from the idea of fighting to the idea of playing, there is a levity that goes along with that helps you to sort of glide along smoothly, right? So, I like to watch tennis, as everybody knows, right? And one of the things that's been it helps me to understand the rest of reality, right? It like takes all of it and distills it down to a court and two people and the interaction between them, and then I can take that and stretch it back out and use it to help me understand the greater reality and the politics, right? Because a tennis court game, battle, duel, whatever, is very similar. It's like a small war or a small game. It's a game being played, right? But you know, they've got rackets instead of swords, and you know, whatever. They have sponsors and whatever. So I've been noticing that some of the players, like, they are amazing, but they're only really amazing if they're able to dominate and impose their game on somebody else, right? And just blow them off the court, really, kind of thing. But the players that are, in my opinion, right, like the most interesting to watch and the really skilled in a way that is maybe in my, I like, or more important, or I don't know what the right way to say it is, are the ones who really like to play the game, right? Who really are like, they don't, when somebody does something they don't like, rather than spending time not liking it, or I'm not playing that way, or they embrace whatever kind of trick or something is being thrown at them, and that too can play that game. But you have to understand what the person is doing to be able to sort of play back, right? And so I'm thinking of, this past French Open, when Novak Djokovic decided he was going to try and like trick Rafael Nadal by employing all of these drop shots, which drop shots in some ways are like, it's like a trick, it's like cheating, or it's like a financial scam, or like a crypto scam, or a stock market scam, or whatever, right? But it only works if the other person hasn't figured out, isn't willing, like it worked like for 1 or 2 points, and then Rafael Nadal got quick and figured out what he was doing, and it made him pay, made him just like, not only did it not work, but it was like an epic slaughter. But he didn't get pissed off when he got tricked. He was like, oh, I see what we're playing here. I see what we're doing. And the only way to understand something is to engage in it, right? You can't avoid something and then understand it well enough to play the game that is being presented on the court, right? And so just, I understand what you're saying, but like really when you're far back in the court, there's no good time for a drop shot. Like you're gonna have to fucking, really kick it to try and get the ball, or you're gonna miss, right? So I don't know that there's like an optimal time for something like cryptocurrency to be experimented with it. I think part of it is just deciding that like, I am going to engage this game, or I'm not going to engage this game. And if I'm going to engage, then I'm going to go for, like do it like, okay, I'm going to play this and see how it works, rather than I'm fighting it the whole way kind of thing, right? And so it's a different kind of animal than a fiat currency, right? Just a blockchain is a different kind of animal than the way we had the banking system kind of thing. Right. But just to say, like, I don't know that it's any worse or any more problematic or whatnot. Right. And it's what's shown up in our game. We're on the grand chessboard of life. Crypto has shown up. And if, one wants to become the masterful game player, right, then you have to understand how all the pieces of the game work. So I think people should engage at the point to the level that they're comfortable. Right. And for some people, that's none. Right. But, I don't think that that there's ever, you never know what a player is going to introduce to the game board, and cryptocurrency has been introduced. And I don't think it's the savior. I think there are some things that are evil behind it, and evil intent and lied and just, deception and all that kind of stuff. Right. But that's just part of this game, dude. Right.
Okay. So I love the reframe to game. I love it. My body was awash with chills when you said it, and I'm excited to adopt that perspective. And I don't agree, period, because it's fun to not agree with you. But we're splitting. Like, this is a moment where we're splitting into different timelines. We can see that with people whose communities are ravaged by the Wuhan virus, or my community where I don't know anyone who has it, who's gotten it. No, like, it's all different. But we're choosing our own reality. There is no value to a digital currency. There's nothing real there. I'm still invested in this moment, in 3D reality, in humanity, in food and water and connection. That's the timeline that I'm choosing. Right. So it doesn't make up, for my mind, it's not a sustainable solution to our economic enslavement. It's not a currency that makes sense because there's no value to it. To me, as we talked about, salt or rice makes much more sense. I don't think it's about Aikitoing. Like, yes, we're Aikitoing while the timelines are still enmeshed, but I think it's about creating a completely different game, and they're already too invested in this one for me to trust it, the powers that were.
Yeah. So I get that, right? And we're in that thing right now. The realities haven't split, right? And even, I guess, from the perspective I come at it from, even when the realities are completely, let's say we go to the thing where like there's a completely sovereign world and a completely controlled world, right? Like the very, very masterful game player, which I like playing games, right, is going to figure out how to move seamlessly between the worlds. So simply, right. And I want to go back and correct one thing I said. A drop shot isn't cheating. It isn't. It's a rule. It's allowed. It's a shot. It's allowed in the game or whatever. But it's usually employed in a deceptive manner, right? It's usually like comes up to try and deceive your person. I wanted to go back and correct it, not make drop shots bad, right? They can actually be entertaining to watch and whatnot. But I think that right now we have cryptocurrencies and we have the banking system, right? The regular banking system. We're not at salt and stuff like that as the currency yet, right? I think all of these things should be possibilities and realities. And then we were also talking about this in response to the part about the Greater Reset presentation that you were a little about, was that there was so much talk about the cryptocurrency and the, whatever. But we also still, like, to go back to earlier in our conversation, we're not 100% sure we know everything that these cryptocurrencies are doing, right? We don't know all of the things that are happening because of them, right? And so, like, for me, just the engagement is about awareness and understanding, right? And that, I like the idea of there being, separations between things sometimes, but for me, the whole situation is not an either or, it's a both and. Like, I like the idea of multiple possible realities existing and people can choose to stay in the one they want or to move between them, right? And for me, I like the dance between. Like, I like to dance, so,
Me too. We both have that in common.
Both have that in common. So yeah, so I understand it. It is always one of those things that, like, sometimes it seems like it doesn't go along with people who are trying to create this sort of sovereign, organic sort of movement that they also seem incredibly invested in technology and cryptocurrencies. But in another way, like, if you look at that statue from the other side of the room, it does make sense, right? So it just goes to what you think reality is. And, like, I know, like, James Corbett is big on both, like, things like food sovereignty, but also certain aspects of encrypted technologies. But he's been encouraging people for, like, many, many years, and people don't pay as close attention to this work of his as they do his other stuff, to create their own mesh nets, their own intranets, where, like, you're not part of the greater internet, but in your neighborhood with the people you know and trust, you can create a network system so you guys can share files between that, right? So you can have your own internet and you can interact securely that way, right? So he's doing some of that other stuff.
That makes sense, because it's all about sovereignty. So if you're not dependent on the grid and on their internet to be able to trade, then that makes more sense. But it doesn't make sense for our solutions to be dependent on the matrix, on their electricity, on them deciding that we're allowed to be. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we just need to be sovereign. And the only way that I see that happening from this vantage point is analog. But when we have our own internet, then crypto will make more sense to me. I'll feel better. And I want to be clear, like, I have some crypto, like, I'm hedging my bets. I'm just speaking my concerns about it because we're not in full control and we're not sovereign. And there are a lot of X factors where they could come in at any moment and seize it because, well, that's just how it seems to me. And I just want us to be set up so that we have our own backs and we're not at the whim of the powers that were to fuck with us.
Absolutely. Like, a many layered plan, like a plan for all kinds of occasions, is what's in order here. And then learning how to move, like, reality changes from day to day. And this day, like, the internet's on, tomorrow maybe it's off, or another one is there. The grid, like, being able to sort of roll with whatever comes, I think, is the most important sort of, like, stance to be in right now, right? Like that, like, set up and prepared to roll with whatever comes today, which is probably going to be a different thing than came yesterday and will come tomorrow, right? So can we agree on that? Actually, my friend Darren, who is the one who's requesting to do a show with you, he loves the way we model peaceful disagreement on our show.
Aw, thanks, Darren. I love it too. It's so much fun to disagree with you.
So, are you good to wrap up this part? We're going to do an afterwards. I'm gonna do a rant. I'm gonna do a very socially inappropriate rant on the other side. So people join us over on Danny's Patreon or my Patreon for the afterward segment. And is your salon series still going? What are your offerings for the people?
My salon series is still happening. It's Saturdays from 12 to 1 Mountain Time. It's sliding scale donation, $11 to $44. And it's like, group coaching, manifestation, quantum languaging stuff. It's just a place for us to continue to build our community. And I will say, as far as what I've manifested since starting this, I'm still in shock. So it's a place for us to drop in every Saturday. You can sign up on my quantumlanguaging.com site where it says workshops.
Awesome. All righty. You guys know where to find me. And my website should be up hopefully sometime in the next few weeks. And people can go there and they'll be able to find all my content and stuff. But also I'm offering a variety of different kind of like sessions now, besides just nutrition consulting and life coaching. I'm also doing storytelling now, right? So which is kind of fun, where like people can come and they can spend an hour with me and they can ask me to sort of tell them a story, or if they've heard me talk a little about something that they'd like to know more about, or if they have a story that they want to share with me and get my insights and thoughts and analysis of, we can do that as well. So storytelling hour is also an option.
I love this. It's like 5D interpretation.
Absolutely. There we go. At least 5D, right? And you can, for now,
multi-D.
Yeah, for now, until my website's up, you can just email me at emilycmoyer@protonmail.com for that. And also, guys, check out Michael and I are playing the glass bead game now, and that's a cool new thing we're offering. So, anywho, all right, guys, we'll see you afterwards. Bye.